The arson threat was turned over to the county sheriff and the local fire department for file in case the threat was carried out. If so, it clearly leads back to the Delta Force of Area 51. We also now had the names of the chain of command leading all the way back to the Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney, at that time. And we had attorneys who were most anxious and prepared to initiate such lucrative action if it happened.
Great.
One time we were going to dinner, and after he told us that his Delta 6 people were around. And we told him, isn't it possible that we get intercepted or something? He said, it's possible. He said, I don't know what their orders are or what they're going to do. So we said, well, maybe you shouldn't carry your identification cards with them, just what you need, a driver's license, and hide the rest, because he had secure cards. And he took them out and buried them under the leaves under a tree in the backyard of the house. And we went to dinner, and when we came back, he went out to get his cards. Cards were gone. The leaves that looked like they hadn't been disturbed, and the cards were gone. So we concluded from that the cards must have had a tracker in the cards, and Delta 6 knew where he was when he's carrying the card, and also knew where the card was when he wasn't carrying it. And they just went over the wall and took him out from under the leaves and took the tracker away, which was also his ID card at S4. And that was scary that they knew that much about him. They knew where he was every minute up to that time. When he lost his cards, they must have had another way of tracking him, but they always knew where he was. We weren't advertising the information that Connor O'Ryan was staying with us. And nobody knew it but Bob Dean, who was the deputy sheriff at the time, taking the staff car, police car home with him at night. And he knew that Connor O'Ryan was there, but Dilettoso had something he wanted Jim Cox to do, and they drove up there to do it. And he invited Connor to go with him, and Connor thought he could give him the slip and go to Phoenix with Jim. They didn't know apparently that Jim was going to Phoenix. He rode up with him to get out from under their surveillance here. They knew immediately where they went. They followed him to Phoenix and watched them there.
Do you think Connor O'Ryan was implanted? Do you think he had an implant?
He may have had an implant in his body someplace that they could track. They certainly knew where he was all the time.
Did he ever discuss whether or not these sentries were implanted at any point?
He didn't tell us that. I've never asked him, and he didn't volunteer any information about anything. This is message number 3, drawn in red ink on typewriter paper beside my typewriter in my house at Winona Circle. This is redrawn from the original. I copied the original. I don't know what happened to the original at this time. And then they left us a note on my stationery, my paper, from Jim Dilettoso's office with the NASA letterhead on it that I had by my typewriter in my house. We had gone and we come back, and it's behind the letters, numbers in my house, showing that they have been in my house, got the paper next to my typewriter, prepared their message, and put it outside of my house. So now we know that they can get in and out. And it just went on and on like that for 10 days.
When did you first become aware that Wendelle had this visitor, Connor O'Ryan, Derek Hennessy, staying at his place?
Wendelle called me while he was at his place and asked me if he could stay at my place, and that Jim Cox would bring him up. And that was a few hours before they arrived.
And what was Wendelle's reasoning for wanting him to be up there at your place?
He didn't say, I didn't ask.
You have an extremely close relationship with Wendelle then, I presume.
Well, I've known him since the 70s, and we've worked on many cases together and traveled many places, so it was a normal thing for him to ask me and me to say okay without needing to know any more details. Wendell's grandson, Jem Cox, came to visit me after Wendell had called and had a guest with them. Wendell had asked me if Jem and a guest could come and stay at my place in Paradise Valley, Arizona, and I said that would be fine. So Wendell and this guy came, kind of a tall, rugged-looking guy with a scar across his face, lots of tattoos, kill motherfucker, you know, etc. on his arms, and had military fatigues on and a duffel bag, and was quiet but pleasant. And Jem had his own guest house that he could stay in, and I let John stay in the other guest house. And
Who's John?
Well, that was how he was introduced to me, was as John Connor.
Oh, it wasn't even as Connor O'Ryan. It was as John Connor.
John Connor. I never knew the other name that you just said.
Okay.
It was John Connor, and no explanation was given to me about who he was or anything. It was not necessary, so I had a little guest house, another one that he could stay in. That was fine. As the days went on, Jem Cox let me know that this was someone who needed safe harbor as he was deciding about whether to go permanently AWOL from his job up at Area 51 or whether he would go back. So to me it was, yeah, bullshit. You know, this guy is somebody just wanting a place to stay or whatever his game is. It just didn't compute that a guy who was AWOL from Area 51 would be here staying at my ranch in Paradise Valley, but so be it. Odder things had happened.
What allowed you to let him, a complete stranger, stay there?
Well, first of all, Wendell had asked me to do it, and second of all, Jem Cox was there. And Jem Cox is no wimp. And he stayed completely invisible. I mean, we never saw him in the daytime, and he really didn't come over to the main house. And we'd see him walking around, and Jem and him were the two people communicating with each other. So even though the atmosphere was that of a violent drama, violent claims, it wasn't going on in a moment to moment. It wasn't obvious. Only occasionally, when people would come over that I was working with, would they see him in the day or night and ask, you know, who's that scar-faced guy with all the tattoos on walking around with some kind of bludgeoning weapon? And I don't remember what I might have said, but it would have been to try to dismiss it.
What did you think was going on while you were doing your other projects with your business and, you know, managing your own personal life and, you know, daily events? What sense did you get was going on with Jem and Connor during that time as to what they were doing, you know, day to day?
Well, I don't think Jem was doing things on an hourly basis with Connor because he was working on our project, which was developing software for a supercomputer center, which eventually, following year, we did do and did open and did get going. And that's where I had various people from audio and video to computers to image processing coming, and I had little labettes all over the property, and Jem was part of that. So his main reason for being at the ranch was because he was working on that project, not because he was there as the concierge for Derek Hennessy.
So this was just a place for Hennessy to cool while Jem worked with you on his project.
Yeah.
Wendell thought it was safer up there on your ranch than here at Wendell's place.
I assume so.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And also staying at the ranch was another friend of Jem's, was a woman who had spoken at the first UFO Congress in Tucson.